Every single Pokemon game has those infamous early route rodent-like Pokemon, from the original Rattata in Generation 1 to the heavily mean Bidoof in Generation 4. One thing that all these Pokemon have in common is that they are designed to be one of the very first Pokemon you catch after picking your starter, but aren't particularly strong. They might get you through a couple of badges throughout the game, or even in some rarer cases through most of the game or even the entire game, but they are usually replaced with stronger Pokemon later on or relegated to the very back of your party for HM usage. Greedent, the early route normal type Pokemon of Sword and Shield, falls into the same category and fills the same role of a lot of its early route cousins. Its pre-evolution, Skwovet, is encountered very early on, and chances are a lot of people who have played Sword and Shield caught one as one of their very first Pokemon. Its move pool at a low level isn't too great, with the best moves being Tackle and Bite, but it's certainly enough to help you against those early route trainers at lower levels. It doesn't really get much better from there, unfortunately, and once it evolves into Greedent at level 24, it doesn't learn another offensive move until level 34 where it gets Counter, and then again at level 41 where it gets Bullet Seed. It learns Super Fang at level 48, which is a decent move, especially for catching Pokemon, but its level up moveset is one of the worst I've seen on a fully evolved Pokemon in a while. Greedent has access to some nice TM moves, however, but you'll want to focus on physical attack since Greedent has a 95 base attack stat versus only a 55 base special attack stat. It gets all of the Elemental Fangs, Brutal Swing, and Stomping Tantrum to give it some nice coverage options. Not the strongest moves, but definitely enough to help against some certain gym leaders who are weak to some of these types. The stat total is a big upgrade upon evolution, however, as Skwovet only has a base stat total of 275, which is rather low, while Greedent is at 460. Now 460 really isn't that high compared to other Pokemon like Orbeetle, Corviknight, or Boltund, which are all Pokemon you happen to find early on in Sword and Shield as well, like Skwovet, but the best part about Greedent would be its HP stat, which is its highest base stat at 120. With 95 defense, this Pokemon can be a decent physical wall while playing through the game, or perhaps something to send out to take a hit while you want to use a potion on one of your other Pokemon to heal your team. While there are some decent redeeming qualities to use Greedent on your team, the fact of the matter is that as your team starts to fill up, it will be one of the first options replaced for a new Pokemon. With that in mind, when creating a competitive team for Pokemon Sword and Shield after you beat the Elite Four, Greedent will probably be one of the last Pokemon you ever consider, even with the limited Pokedex in Sword and Shield. From a standard singles perspective, Greedent doesn't really seem viable at all. It has a good HP stat, sure, and a decent attack set that can be used, however there are much better Pokemon out there when it comes to normal type physical attackers. Something like Diggersby seems like a straight upgrade despite being part ground type, as well as regular Linoone, which is just a Bell or Belladrum user. One thing that is a disadvantage though is Greedent's 20 base speed, however some people might argue that can be an advantage because that makes it a prime user for Trick Room due to the low speed. I'm personally not the biggest fan of Trick Room teams, especially in singles, since it's a bit trickier to set up, and since battles are typically longer than double battles, it means you'll get less loose out of your Trick Room in a singles battle versus doubles. So since single battles are pretty much ruled out for Greedent, how about double battles? Luckily Sword and Shield has a pretty good rank system for double battles with competitive rule sets to make trying Greedent out online a little bit easier. I found this rental team featuring Greedent on Reddit, which I will link in the description as well, which focuses on a Trick Room team setting up for Greedent to get some KOs. To go over the team, first we have Greedent of course, with the Cheek Pouch ability and a Citrus Berry. This pairs nicely with Belly Drum to boost Greedent's attack set a lot and then restoring its HP back to full thanks to the berry and the ability. There's Body Slam for a general stab normal move, and then Stomping Tantrum and Psychic Fangs for general coverage. For the first Trick Room user to pair, we will have Bronzong with the Kasib Berry to help take ghost type attacks, Trick Room, Reflect, and Ally Switch for support, as well as Gyro Ball for an offensive move, so you're not staying there doing no damage the whole time. The other Trick Room setter is Chandelure with Trick Room, Protect, Heat Wave, and Shadow Ball. Chandelure is more of a hybrid on this team since it's sure it could be a support option, but it can also be a Trick Room sweeper due to its good attack stat and good coverage options. I found myself winning some games with Chandelure alone and not even going into Greedent in some cases. Next up we have Togekiss, one of my favorite Pokemon on the team, which is mainly here for the move Follow Me, to take a hit for Greedent to ensure that when you go for Belly Drum, you'll go off properly without having to take damage on your Greedent. Last up there's Vikavolt and Mudsdale, which act more as backup attackers with different coverage options for different situations, one being mainly physical and one being mainly special. I didn't end up using either of these Pokemon at all, but they're definitely good options for any Trick Room team in a double battle. So my game plan for using Greedent to its full potential with this team was to keep it in the back of the party and come in later after Trick Room was set up with Togekiss ideally in the back as well. I didn't see a point in really blindly leading Greedent all the time since it was too risky, since you're not really going to be able to do anything without going for a belly drum and having a trick room up, since everything can outspeed you and kill you if you go for a belly drum early. I usually led with Bronzong and Chandelure and saved Togekiss in the back with Greedent to use for Follow Me of course once the trick room was properly set up. It does require quite a bit of steps to do, but since all of the KO pressure wasn't on Greedent, it was able to work. Chandelure usually got 1 or 2 KOs while Bronzong was there to support, even get a couple of KOs on its own, setting up Reflect, and was my primary trick room setter. Ideally, they would both go down at the same time early on in the trick room cycle, so Greedent can come in back by Togekiss to do some real damage after setting up a belly drum. If a Reflect was up, that helped of course, but it wasn't needed. From here I would go for belly drum of course on Greedent and Follow Me on Togekiss. This meant that I would get the belly drum off no problem, and even if Togekiss went down during this turn, I would outspeed with Greedent the following turn due to trick room and pretty much guarantee a KO due to the massive damage. This worked out rather well actually, although all of these games were my first ranked double games on Sword and Shield, so take that as you will. However, in the end it was a lot easier to pull off than I originally thought when starting out this battle. This is a rather fun team to use as well, and in a doubles format it makes Greedent a bit easier to use. I personally feel like doubles gives weaker Pokemon more of a chance to shine compared to something like single battles, which is a big part of makes double battles so fun. You can pair them with Pokemon that are there to support them and work their strengths, while that's a bit harder to do in singles. In the end, sure there are Pokemon that outclass Greedent in various different categories for sure, but when you try to maximize Greedent to its full potential, there really isn't a Pokemon exactly like it. It's still not a great or even good Pokemon, but it can be made to work if you devote a lot of your team and time to it. So what is up with Greedent? In the end, it's pretty much useless while playing through the regular game outside of being used at the very start of the game, pretty much useless in singles as well since there's really no point in using it, and definitely shines the brightest in double battles, assuming the rest of your team is designed to help Greedent. It's not the brightest shine, but it's definitely something. I would say Greedent is a fun Pokemon to use, it's rather unexpected, and something I would recommend trying if you're looking for a more unconventional trick room team to surprise some of your opponents.